Thank you for joining this virtual press call with Senator Peter Welch, Ranking Member of the Agriculture Committee Amy Klobuchar, Senator Ben Ray Lujan, Senator Ron Wyden, Senator Jeff Merkley, Governor Tina Kotek, and Ivy Enoch of Hunger Free Vermont. Today's call is focused on Republicans' efforts to gut the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. We will hold a brief Q&A following remarks from policymakers. If you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand. This call is on the record and will be recorded. With that, I'll turn it over to Senator Peter Welch.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank my colleagues who we'll be hearing from very shortly for joining us, as well as the governor. We're at the moment of truth. It's the time for action and no longer just talk. And of course, the talk has been about the premier legislative objective of the Trump administration, and that's this tax cut. Here's the truth. It's much less about a tax cut than it is about a benefit cut. It's about taking things away from people who need them and depend on them. When I'm in Vermont, nobody talks to me about the tax cut. Peter, what are you guys doing? How can I get my tax cut? What they're talking to me about is the cost of things, inflation, paying for groceries. And they're terrified about losing health care. Medicaid's going to be cut. And many are really terrified about losing the $2 a meal that folks who receive SNAP benefits get right now. You know, in Vermont, about 1 in 10 Vermonters are receiving SNAP benefits. And that is our poorest Vermonters, low-income folks, kids. It makes a huge difference in their life that they can have access to SNAP. Now, our Republican colleagues are talking about taking about $280 billion out of the SNAP program. They're literally about to vote on doing something that or very close to it very, very soon. And of course, that's before they get to cutting Medicaid. It's before they get, actually after they have already savaged scientific research and going after universities and really eroding basic necessities that are essential to the well-being of Vermonters and to our country. But the SNAP is the cruelest of all. You know, bottom line here, you got to eat. And some of our Republican colleagues say there's too many people on SNAP. You can't be on SNAP unless you're really, really low income. And this is a time in our country where there's massive income inequality, something that is not even on the table for discussion. And the top priority that we're seeing is this tax cut that'll add over $4 trillion to the deficit. And it'll be paid for by, among other things, taking away the $2 a meal that is available to folks who are receiving SNAP benefits. So this is not a waste, fraud, and abuse deal. I mean, I'm not even sure Elon Musk can do better than $2 a meal, but that's what they're claiming. This is really about taking away basic nutritional security that is so absolutely essential to the well-being of our families and our kids in Vermont and in every single state across the nation. So thank you all for coming. And I want to now turn it over to our champion, our ranking member on the Agriculture Committee, who holds that among many other leadership posts here and has been a champion from day one about protecting nutritional benefits for folks who desperately need them. And that, of course, is Senator Amy Klobuchar. Thank you, Amy.
Well, thank you, Peter. And thank you for being just a good friend. And maybe people know this, but Peter and I have been on in the past 5 committees together. I think we're still. So I have been able to see up front how you're able to stand your ground, but also work with the other side of the aisle for good. And right now we have one of the most challenging issues in front of us because as we speak, House Republicans' budget would make significant cuts, over $200 billion in cuts to food and nutrition assistance. 42 million Americans, and let's make it very clear, their kids, their seniors, their people with disabilities, their veterans rely on food assistance. So when the local factory closes or the job at the local gas station pays just $11 an hour and they've got 2 kids to feed, when food costs spike, or when an aging parent moves in and there's another person to feed, families often rely on SNAP. And at a time when President Trump's across the board tariffs and rising costs of household goods are already hurting Americans, the last thing we should be doing is cutting nutrition assistance. Local grocery stores, especially those in small towns, and I know there's a number of these in Vermont, also benefit from SNAP dollars in many places. SNAP dollars, when you have an independent grocery store, that's a really important piece of this as well. It's the whole ecosystem. It's farmers that are growing and producing the food, which is part of the SNAP dollars. And then, of course, the grocery stores. And then the most important thing, the people that need the food. Congressional Republicans are rushing to take away affordable food and health care. They say they aren't doing that. And they say they want states to have some skin in the game. Well, what they really mean is that states, that many of them are struggling with their own budgets because of this economic turmoil right now, and Medicaid and all the other issues at stake, housing, where we haven't, on the federal level, promises have not been kept by Republicans on that front. And so now their plan is to just push a bunch of these costs over to the states. And it's going to force states, of course, to cut benefits, eligibility, or both. It also means that local nonprofit, community organizations, food banks, schools will be left trying to pick up the pieces. And while we have been willing to work with them in the past on reform, upgrading outdated computer system, and not, we have been very clear that we're not going to reduce benefits for kids, seniors, people with disabilities, and the like. So at a time when the vast majority of Americans are just trying to get by, raise their kids, worry about the cost of living, this is the last time that we should be rushing through a package of unfunded mandates. This should be, of course, done in the context of a farm bill in which we have negotiations of all programs. They're choosing to do it this way, and we are fighting back and standing with the people of this country. So now I get to introduce and turn this over to a champion of nutrition programs who leads the Democratic efforts on the subcommittee that works on this issue, and that is Senator Ben Ray Lujan. Senator, over to you.
Thank you so much, Senator Klobuchar. Always good to be with you. To both you and to Senator Welch, thank you for bringing us together to protect SNAP for our constituents. And to the governor of Oregon, Tina, it's an honor to be with you today. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, as been clearly stated by both Senators Welch and Senators Klobuchar, Senate Republicans have already moved legislation that proposes to cut up to $230 billion from the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And just last night, Republicans on the House Agriculture Committee released their plan, which would push costs on states, a price that many states just can't afford. So what my Republican colleagues are going to try to say is that it's not Republicans that are eliminating federal money to SNAP. They're just simply pushing it to the states. Well, the net effect of this is it will be devastating to states. If this federal money is taken to give more tax breaks to billionaires and millionaires in the Trump tax scam 2.0, they being my Republican colleagues, will eliminate SNAP access to kids and to seniors across the country. It will be devastating. Not too long ago, I went to the the Senate floor with a list of states where my Republican colleagues represent families who are covered by Medicaid and SNAP, to make sure they knew exactly what they were voting against when I offered an amendment to protect this program. And my Republican colleagues just decided to gut it, to just not even try to pretend that they were going to be taking these federal dollars and giving it to the most wealthy in the country. Something that we all know to be true is everyone deserves to have access to affordable, healthy food, nutritious food, and make sure it's on the table. Even still making this argument, every Senate Republican voted to gut SNAP. Now, in my state, 1 in 4 people rely on this program, many of whom are children. If this program is cut at that $230 billion level, it devastates it. And I would argue it jeopardizes a farm bill as well. Now, I have a lot of constituents who are farmers and ranchers who carefully plan their farming season around what grocery stores and food banks will need. They spend time based on these programs investing money. securing water resources, and planting seeds. Well, now there's a whole question with what negative impact to farmers and ranchers are going to exist based on a program that existed a year ago. Donald Trump decided at the 11th hour to pull the rug from under them and left these farmers and ranchers hurting, in addition to his national sales tax, which he calls tariffs. It's hurting farmers more and more. I want to close with this, with a few things that my constituents said at a recent town hall, a recent roundtable over at one of the food banks in New Mexico. Julie Ciano, who is with Unity Resources, vegetable farm in Santa Fe. It's a nonprofit. She said, food is in the ground, seedlings are in the greenhouse, with the intention of them going to the food depot, with the intention of these seeds already being planted, going to our school lunches, and now the program's been cut. Alice Perez, who heads the Gallup Community Pantry, said, we're right back to where we started, with the SNAP benefits going away. We have families of 4 living on $200 a month in groceries where there's no grocery stores. What's going to happen to them? Quite honestly, the way to look at this is it's not fiscally responsible. It's taken away from the hungry across America to make billionaires and millionaires even wealthier, and it's going to even explode the deficit. So just one concern after another in these spaces. It's also worth noting that every Senate Republican voted against Senator Wyden's amendment to protect Medicaid, all while blocking Democratic amendments to make it clear that those making $100 million, $500 million, and $1 billion a year shouldn't get a tax break on the backs of working Americans. That seems like common sense to me. Republicans are not looking out for their constituents who depend on these federal programs. They're just lying to them. That's what's happening right now. Republicans are looking out for the wealthiest Americans and corporate interests, plain and simple. That's why I'm glad to have colleagues in the Senate and people in every state who are raising their voices about the threats to these programs that we all call SNAP. I want to introduce my colleague, the ranking member of the Finance Committee, who's been a champion on this and so many issues across the country, and that's none other than Senator Ron Wyden. Ron?
And big thanks to Senate Agriculture Democrats for having 100% of Oregon's senators, plus the bonus of our governor. So we really feel like we are getting exalted treatment here. And I want to just spend a minute or two discussing the Republican healthcare double whammy, because the combination of less food assistance for seniors and kids and then Republican cuts in Medicaid is a prescription for a sicker America. And the fact is, what we're talking about is healthcare 101. You need access to food to be healthy, and you need access to timely healthcare when you're ill. And under the Republican program, Republicans are just going to get sicker. And what we're here to say is nobody should lose access to nutrition, and nobody should lose quality healthcare to pay for tax breaks for the people at the very top. And I consider this an unforced error in terms of generating more hunger in America. It's an unforced error in denying healthcare, because healthcare will be more expensive when people like seniors have to go to nursing homes. And I just want you to know that 100% of Oregon's United States senators, with the help of our terrific governor, we are all in this battle, because the question of access to food and access to healthcare are intertwined. And we'll be damned if we're going to see that lost in order to give these breaks to the people at the top. Thanks to everybody, and especially my colleagues. And I don't know what the parlance of today's meeting is, but as long as you're yielding Senator Klobuchar to somebody from Oregon, I'll be a happy boy.
Well, we're very excited to have your governor on, as well as both of you. So I don't know. I feel like I'm not in Vermont, Peter. It's great.
My responsibility to jump in next, so I'm going to be very brief to turn it over to the governor. But this bill, reconciliation bill, is all about families lose and billionaires win. And two dramatic ways to demonstrate that are millions of children will lose health care in order to fund tax breaks for billionaires. Millions of children will go hungry to fund tax breaks for billionaires. This strategy of greatly increasing the funds that states have to be put up, they have to double the amount they put in for admin costs. And the states, depending on the calculation, will have to fund 5 to 25% of the program. For Oregon, that would be $400 million plus or minus. I don't know that that's even possible given everything else that's happening. The governor will weigh in on that shortly. It's a good chance that lots of kids will not be able to even study in school. I mean, they've gone through COVID, that was a blow, but to go to school hungry, nobody learns anything when they're hungry. Kids don't develop right, their brains don't develop right, their muscles don't develop right without new food and nutrition. It's pretty outrageous, this set of measures. I hope we have some, particularly Republicans from swing districts, to say hell no to this, join the hell no caucus. I have a feeling the governor of Oregon's in the hell no caucus, and she's going to give us the state perspective. And let me turn it over to her, our fabulous governor, Tina Kotek.
Berkeley, and thank you, Senator Welch, and all the other senators here for inviting me today and organizing this conversation. I'm Tina Kotek, governor of the great state of Oregon. With each drastic change to the nation's safety net being proposed at the federal level, state leaders like myself have a responsibility to speak up on behalf of their residents. And that's why I'm here today, joining leaders from across the country to speak out against the short-sighted and harmful cuts proposed to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, cuts that would hit families in Oregon and across the nation very hard, especially now when the cost of living is undermining family economic stability everywhere. Bottom line for me is these proposals, $300 billion, means that when Oregonians pay their federal tax dollars, those dollars are not going to be coming back to Oregon where they need it to help the citizens of Oregon. And I want to tell you that just since someone brought up Medicaid, 89% of Oregonians who receive SNAP benefits are also on Medicaid, also called the Oregon Health Plan here in Oregon. So there is a lot of overlap with our safety net, and all of it is under threat right now. So before I was governor, I served in the legislature for 15 years. But before that, I fought to help people not go hungry. I worked as an advocate for Oregon's statewide emergency food bank system. I learned directly in that work from our families, our seniors, our veterans, what it means for people to skip meals, to pay their rent or to pay for their medications or simply go hungry. I've seen the resilience of our communities, but I've also seen how fragile food security can be for too many of our neighbors. That's why I've spent my career fighting to expand access to nutrition and support for Oregon for every Oregonian, regardless of where they live. SNAP is one of the most effective anti-poverty and pro-health programs we have in America. It helps over 700,000 Oregonians, more than half of them children, seniors, or people with disabilities. It helps them put food on the table. When you cut SNAP, you're not cutting bureaucracy. You're cutting a child's dinner. You're cutting their breakfast. You're cutting their family's dignity. Beyond the moral urgency, there is an economic reality to this proposal. More than 3,500 retailers across Oregon take these benefits. Every SNAP dollar generates about $1.50 to $1.80 in economic activity. That's money spent at grocery stores, farmers markets, and local businesses in every corner of Oregon, urban, suburban, and rural. When families lose benefits, local economies will take a hit. Jobs are lost, stores will close, the entire community feels it. Here in Oregon, we have worked hard to build a food system rooted in equal access and community resilience. However, we can't do it alone, and we simply do not have the resources to backfill what the federal government has rightly supported for decades. These changes are not just unsustainable in a cost shift to states, they are an attack on the food security of millions of hardworking Americans, pure and simple. These changes are just plain wrong. They make it harder for states like mine to do our jobs, to meet urgent needs, and to plan responsibly. So I'm here to urge Congress to reject these cuts. I know we have senators here who are in that no caucus. Instead, let's invest in American families and the food security that we know strengthens communities, supports our economies, and reflects the basic decency we owe one another. And with that, it's my honor to pass it on to the person out in the field doing the work in Vermont, Ivy with Hunger Free Vermont.
I think you're muted.
You're still mute, Ivy.
Hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for your patience. I'm really, really honored to speak among this esteemed lineup of leaders and champions of SNAP, and I want to especially thank Senator Welch for the opportunity to share the perspective from the ground here in Vermont. When we talk about SNAP, we're not just talking about numbers on a page, we're talking about people. And I think of Nicole, a mother in Vermont, who says that the support she receives through SNAP helps keep her family afloat, but it also does something even more important. It allows her children to thrive. SNAP wasn't just a helping hand, she said. It was a bridge, one that carried her family from crisis to hope. And Nicole's story isn't unique. Every day, 1 in 10 Vermonters rely on SNAP, not only to afford groceries, but to build better lives. And of those, 85% are children, older adults, or people with disabilities. SNAP is a proven and essential anti-hunger program that must be protected, not slashed. Right now, even the possibility of SNAP cuts is creating real harm. And we're hearing from Vermonters who are very worried, people who are already budgeting every dollar, worried about whether they'll suddenly lose this vital support. The uncertainty is taking a toll, and it's not just about whether benefits will be cut. It's about how that fear weighs on families who are already under strain. That stress is very real, and it's happening today. Proposals to make deep, devastating cuts to SNAP can't be justified ever, but even less so now. Not when food prices are rising, not when families are already stretched thin. These cuts would increase hunger, full stop, for kids, for older adults, for folks with disabilities, for veterans, for our community members. They would hurt local economies and force already stretched food shelves to bear an impossible burden. SNAP is a lifeline, and I speak from experience as someone raised by a hardworking single dad who depended on SNAP benefits to make sure my sister and I didn't go hungry. So whether someone is raising kids, recovering from a setback, or growing older, everyone deserves the peace of mind that comes with being able to put food on the table, and SNAP provides that peace of mind. So as I said at the top, when we talk about SNAP, we're not just talking about numbers on a page, we're talking about people. We're talking about a retired grandmother raising her grandkids, a community college student working 2 part-time jobs, a family recovering from a flood. I want to end by sharing a quote from Alicia, another SNAP participant in Vermont. Alicia said, "Hunger is scary. It's not knowing if you'll be able to eat that's scary. I hope one day that hunger is going to become a thing of the past. I'd love for every person to have access to 3 square meals a day and not have to worry about where that's coming from." End quote. I thank Alicia for bravely sharing her story in defense of SNAP. I thank the leaders on this panel for sounding the alarm about these terrible proposed cuts to SNAP. And I deeply thank Senator Welch for working tirelessly to live into that future that Alicia and so many of us in Vermont dream of. Thank you very much.
Ivy, thank you very much. And thank you, my colleagues, and Governor, thank you so much. And we have time for some questions from the press, and Aaron White from my office is going to moderate that. So Aaron, you want to take over?
Yeah, just as a reminder, if anybody has a question, please raise your hand now. We'll have time for about 5 minutes of questions here. Okay. Mariana, in the Washington Post. Go ahead, Mariana.
What does it say about Republican efforts to cut federal costs that they're looking into, throwing this at states? And do states have, I know it's across the board very different how every state functions, but, states in their to carry this weight? Oh, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Some people might want to mute.
I can repeat that if you didn't hear me. Sorry.
Please do. Thanks, Mariana.
Okay, yes. Yeah, no, sorry. My question is mainly on cost sharing and basically what do you make of this push to shift some of the cost of SNAP to states? Do states have the budget to cover these big chunks of SNAP that they're being asked to pay for? I mean, if this happens in 2028. And again, how would that fundamentally change the program if states have to now pay for portions of it?
Thank you for the question. Look, this is a partnership. It's a program that works. SNAP is working in states across the country. The way we share, for example, the administrative costs for SNAP, it's a 50-50 partnership right now. They're proposing to switch that to 75-25, putting more of the admin on top of the states. This is a highly complex bureaucratic program that we need support from our federal partners to make sure we can run the program. And then they want to rely on some bureaucratic, poor methodology to say somehow states should be doing more when things might not be always going well. I can tell you in Oregon, we work really hard to make sure people get paid on time at the right amount. We need the federal government to stand up and move Oregon's taxpayer dollars back to our states to support their ability to feed themselves. We do not have the kind of money that it would take to maintain the program at the current level if these cuts goes through. It will just not happen, and people will go hungry in Oregon.
Peter,
Go ahead.
to what the governor said as we look at this from the national perspective. So what they're proposing right now, they've thrown a bunch of numbers out there, but it's a base cost share of 5%. And you've got all of the states have balanced budget amendments, or every state except Vermont. 40 of the states had less tax revenue in 2024. So to put it in, take that Oregon story, but put it in a national perspective, this is going to mean cuts to benefits. There's no other way the states can do that. At the same time, the grocery costs are going up. And so that is the problem. They also are doing some other things that would punish certain states over others that are very unclear. But it's a huge amount of money. I think for when you look at how much money it is, maybe you have the numbers there for Vermont, but overall it's $128 billion in a share going over to the states. And it's going to be very devastating to a lot of states and obviously to the recipients. This is a federal program and it always has been.
And Peter, if I could just add,
Yeah.
to what Senator Klobuchar just shared. In addition to that, Republicans at the same time are going after Medicaid. So now Republicans are trying to say that they're not eliminating these programs, but they're about to eliminate federal money for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program on the back of eliminating federal money for Medicaid and telling states, oh no, you come up with this. What Republicans are trying to do is just kill these programs. That's what they're up to.
That's right. Aaron, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
Minutes.
next question is from Eddie at the Oregonian, and this will be our last question. Eddie, go ahead.
Just a little bit more specifics from you, Governor Kotek, and Senators Merkley and Wyden. You said that, if this went into effect and Oregon had to fund $400 million, SNAP wouldn't look the same. Realistically, what kind of reduction would we be looking at? What kind of tangible impacts would we see at the Oregon level?
I appreciate the question. I can't even contemplate at the moment the actual impact. And the proposal just came out, but we should have those numbers in a couple of days. Here's what I would say is the federal government pays 100% of the cost of the food benefit. They're talking about shifting as much here in Oregon to 25% of that food cost coming to the state of Oregon. That's a really big number. I don't have it handy, but I can tell you from my experience, that is a big number. We don't have those dollars here at the state to do that. And that means we'll have to decide which people will get benefits. I don't think we can make that choice and shouldn't have to make that choice. The program runs well now. The federal government can pass budgets that fund these programs. Congress is proposing this. The Republicans in Congress are proposing this only for the reason is they're looking for ways to pay for something that they think they need in it that does not help people. We need to feed people first, and then you can have all the other conversations you want. But we have to feed people first, and that means maintaining SNAP at the benefit levels that we have.
Thank you. I will turn it over to Senator Welch for closing remarks.
Well, I want to thank Governor. Thank you so much for taking the time. And, you know, you're on the front lines, and we will be dumping a huge problem on you and the people of Oregon if we let this thing pass. And I want to thank all my colleagues. And just the final point here is that when you get into the reality of what this tax cut bill is about, it is not about providing additional income in the pockets of everyday Oregonians, everyday Vermonters, everyday Americans. It's a continuation of very generous tax cuts for very, very wealthy people and multinational corporations. And in a gesture to, quote, fiscal responsibility, they'll, quote, pay for it, even though it'll result in close to $5 trillion added to the deficit. But they'll pay for it by taking meals off the table for kids. They'll pay for it by kicking seniors out of nursing homes. By the way, this is real, okay? This is not just political rhetoric. This is real. People will lose healthcare. People will lose their meals, $2 to pay for a meal. That's what they'll lose, all in the name of, quote, fiscal responsibility. But it is absolutely the wrong thing to do all around. And the point also that you made, Governor, and that Senator Klobuchar made, this money gets spent locally, so it helps our local economy as well as those folks who get the meals. And by the way, it helps our farmers. One of the things that farmers are so proud of is that they feed America. And they're really proud that the products they produce end up on the tables of lower income folks in Oregon, in Vermont, and all around the country. So it's I'm mystified about why anybody wants to do what we're on the precipice of doing. But the fear of Trump is great, and the wisdom that should be applied here is a little bit in short supply. So, Governor, thank you so much for bringing home the reality of what this is going to mean to you and your ability to do your job on behalf of Oregonians, and to all my colleagues. And Ivy, thank you so much for the day-to-day work that you do. Really admire it, and your story too about your single parent dad raising you and your daughter and making sure your sister and making sure you had good meals and were able to become this wonderful public servant that you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Keep the faith, Ivy, for your work you're doing. Take care, everyone.